Hi everyone, welcome to our table talk with Pastor Jon. And today we're delving into an important area for the whole church.
Yeah, this is like, we've been talking about this hinge moment, this Moses to Joshua moment, new land, new place, new space. And I think I said 2 or 3 weeks ago, I think I've said it every week in different ways. Today's message, or the message from Sunday, is sort of like a Rubicon moment, a red line moment for us to really sit back, because if we don't get this right, we might not be able to cross the river.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is about our deepest attitudes.
Yeah, the whole message was us trying to wrestle down, do we even want to serve? And what's the difference between volunteerism and service? Do we remember we do this out of love? And then talking again about spiritual gifts and the empowerment that we need to do this. I think I said at one point in this service how ludicrous it would be for me to think I could change the world if I can't even change my own heart. Mm-hmm. So, I think those three things, but really the question about volunteerism and service or no service, huge.
Right.
Huge,
right.
Yeah.
But it starts with love.
Yeah, it starts with love. Like you've been married for a very long time. I'm at year 24. I don't know what year you're at.
41.
41. Yeah, definitely beating me. But it's interesting. You and I both know lots of times in marriage, which is love oriented. It's not fun. It's not exciting. It is duty almost. But there's this deep, deep thing that keeps you going, and it is love. And so everything we're going to talk about, we talked about the sermon we're going to talk about today, has to be rooted in love first and duty second.
Right.
But you need both.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And we want to be loving.
Yep.
And we hear this dynamic. Okay, we don't want to volunteer because that's kind of about me choosing what I like doing.
Right.
Instead, we want to say, hey, okay, Jesus, how can I best love you?
Right. And I think that's the tension point we're at. This is not just our church. This is every church, but especially post-COVID moment, new world. Here's the thing. Volunteerism is a great thing. And if culture stopped volunteering, they become quite sick and toxic. But volunteerism is, do I like it? Am I inspired by it? Do I have time for it? Am I interested in it? That's not the spiritual discipline of service. Mm-hmm. The spiritual discipline of service is I generously give my time and money, and while I do that, I do it for the love of Jesus, and I experience little deaths. Mm-hmm. And mm-hmm. I think I said in the message, many people volunteer in church or volunteer in kingdom initiatives, mm-hmm. and then stop just before the real work was about to happen in their life. Right. Because suddenly they realize they're going to have to die, mm-hmm. and right when they realize, they said, well, I don't want to do that anymore. Mm-hmm. And they miss the actual thing. Mm-hmm. So there are in Connect groups, there are so many of you who don't volunteer or serve. Mm-hmm. I mean, we have that's a crisis. Mm-hmm. But then there are so many amazing people in our church that give their time and money, mm-hmm. but even a lot of that might not be biblical because mm-hmm. it's volunteerism versus service. Right. So this is an invitation for a oh my gosh moment. Holy Spirit, would you show me if I'm even serving, and if I am volunteering, would you make it service? Right. Right. God help us all.
and so it comes very much back to remembering that Jesus ministered out of the power of the Holy Spirit.
Correct. So the wellspring of everything we do is the spiritual discipline of service. But then Jesus, like I talked about, we're going to talk a lot more this year, because it's been 6 years, by the way, since we talked about spiritual gifts in this church. And there are so many new people. Jesus used spiritual gifts, the empowerment of the Spirit, to do all this ministry from. He used spiritual disciplines to listen, get permission, and be formed, but he did it all out of love. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so, this is like a 3-part conversation for our groups. Am I even volunteering / serving? Mm-hmm. What is that? Do I even love Jesus in the first place to do it? Mm-hmm. And am I even aware of my spiritual gifts? And am I even walking in a power that's not my own? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the table that we're setting for the year. Right. Not just a sermon.
Right. Right. And so it's good for us to be thinking through our spiritual gifts.
Yes.
Remembering them, discerning them if we haven't done so already.
Totally.
That's a great
And we're going to help you with lots of that later.
That comes a little later.
Yeah.
And that's where we find power for service.
Right.
But even leading up to that, there are spiritual practices, spiritual disciplines
right.
of a great variety.
Right.
And they help us to be acquiring the seeds that grow with the power.
Yeah, I would say spiritual disciplines just like Jesus, they set the environment to hear right what the Father wants you to do. You can't hear if there's constant noise. But deeper than that, behind all the spiritual disciplines, reading God's, there's so many: fasting, solitude, silence, celebration, biblical meditation, not New Age meditation, all that stuff. The one we're focusing on is service. And I just think the conversation in the groups is, it would be good for them to bring up the definition I used in the talk and just say, is anyone serving here? Can anyone talk about a time when actually you thought you were serving and it was volunteerism? Is anyone willing to admit they're not doing either? And maybe some prayers for our church, like, it's going to take the Holy Spirit. Forget the power stuff, that's coming later. It's going to take the Holy Spirit in a very narcissistic, busy, apathetic, transient culture to make any one of us even think about service. It's not natural in the best of days, and it's really not natural now.
Right. And perhaps in the short term, if this sermon may help us to become aware that we're not really as engaged in service as we might have thought or hoped.
Right.
And perhaps in the short term, what we need to be doing is thinking of some of the more foundational practices, like reading our Bibles and praying and studying.
Yeah.
So that those seeds
begins to build,
give us a greater sense of what God is doing, and then we move into listening about serving.
Correct. And I said this in the sermon, and maybe again just a cue for the groups. It would be really interesting if, as groups, you actually said to the Lord, because there are people who are serving here, many, but you might want to say, like, Holy Spirit, if I don't have the desire to serve, would you give it to me? There might be other people in the group where you say, Holy Spirit, would you reveal if I've been volunteering or serving? Another moment you might want to do is say, Lord, if I have been serving, could the group pray over me for more power to keep serving? Because when we get to gifts later, power is going to explode across this church. But it will collapse on itself if everyone hasn't decided. And maybe here's the real prayer. Maybe a lot of people in groups just need to say out loud, Jesus, I will serve you. And just don't think it, say it in front of others. I will serve Jesus.
Okay.
I think that's maybe where we need to go.
Wow. Okay. So
There's
a lot to talk about in your groups. And we want to give you the freedom to explore it together. We want to encourage you to be honest with one another and talk about it, because this is an area where we need to take steps to get closer to Jesus, listen to him more, and follow him better.
Yeah.
God bless you in your conversations.
Yeah, God bless you. Thanks, everyone.